Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé, tell all, no limits. What does that mean? Let's watch.
Listen, I've never been, and I know has gone down, and I'm going to own 50% of it, Liz. By us being separated, I've never felt more secure in our relationship since I met her. I'm not jealous.
Okay.
Liz.
That's great. That is actually fantastic. I have chills just hearing him say that for Liz's sake and for his sake. He nailed it. That's the issue. I'm not jealous. Like, he says that like, I have a problem with jealousy. I mean, that's what I hear. I'm not jealous. When we live together, I get jealous and I get triggered and I create all these problems. So, yeah, great. That is fantastic. Have we heard him say that before? Not that definitive. He'll like allude to, oh, believe me, I have insecurities, but to hear him just say it, boom. When we don't live together and we only see each other every other day, I don't get jealous. He didn't say Liz doesn't act like an a-hole or, you know, Liz is more mature when we spend more time apart. He just said, I don't get jealous. Oh, now I could see if he really understands that and really operates from that place, I could see why Liz would give him a second chance, because she's been trying to tell him that. She's been saying, no, you're insecure. You're jealous. There's something wrong with you. You assume that things are happening when they're not. And then you have all these reactions from that assumption. So if you understand and take responsibility that you have distorted jealousy, then we can actually start to work on this. And it sounds like he's done that, maybe through therapy, maybe not. I don't know. That's extremely encouraging, actually. Yeah, interesting.
Do you agree with that?
No.
No? Why not?
Because he's jealous.
I'm not. Liz, are you jealous of me?
Okay. So now I'm not so encouraged. So Sean asks, do you agree that it is the jealousy or whatever? And Liz says, no, because he's jealous. I think she's saying, even though we're apart for 2 days, he still gets jealous. I could see if I were closer to the situation, I could imagine a situation where he's less jealous to him, but still jealous. And so Liz might say, well, yeah, I mean, he's less jealous, but that's not saying much given how much jealous he is. So he's still very jealous. The plus side to us not living together is I get to go home. I don't have to deal with this shit, you know? And so, but for Ed, it could be real. It could be truthful and accurate for him to say, but I don't feel as jealous. You know, when we're together, I feel extreme jealousy and it really plagues me. And when we're apart, I feel so much better. Now, Liz might say, but you have so much more to go because you're so jealous. You're so reactive. And so she says that, which that's kind of how I'm interpreting it. And then he says, no, Liz. So I would have been so much more encouraged if Ed said to Liz, yeah, I still kind of have an issue with jealousy or something like that. Some kind of affirmation of like, you're right, I still get jealous or inquisitiveness. That's one of the best things you can do as a partner. When you hear something like that from your partner, instead of getting defensive, just ask a question. Oh, what are you talking about? You know, if you're in a relationship, wouldn't you be curious? I mean, think about it like customer service, right? If you own a restaurant and someone says like, this food is disgusting, do you kick them out of the restaurant or do you be like, oh, what happened? Because it's data. If you gather consumer information and reactivity, because presumably other people will have that reaction or other people have had that reaction and they haven't said anything to you. So if your partner says something that is like insulting or it doesn't sound right. Now, of course, if it's abusive, then that's not okay. But Liz is like, well, he's still jealous. The best thing to say is like, differentiate, deep breath, and then say, oh, Liz, what do you mean by that? Because I kind of feel like I've been better, but maybe I haven't been. Well, what do you mean? But he doesn't say that, which isn't encouraging. It shows me that he's still in that old place.
Do you agree with that?
No.
No? Why not?
Because he's jealous.
I'm not. Liz, are you jealous of me?
No.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So classic deflection, smoke and mirrors, what do they call it? Smokescreen, where you avoid being confronted, you avoid responsibility by just finding some other way of blaming someone else, you know? And, Charlie does this when anytime he is confronted for his alcoholism, which I don't know if it exists or not, he always says, everyone else drinks in this family. It's like, okay, well, maybe everyone in this family kind of has a problem with alcohol. You have a particular problem with alcohol. So instead of just hearing it or being silent or listening or asking a question, he deflects, smokescreen. Oh, you get so... Yeah, I'm guessing if the show is even a kind of an approximation of their real life together, that, yeah, she might get jealous sometimes, but not even close to what he does. So this is just... my encouragement, discouragement is going up and down. I was discouraged, now I was encouraged, now I'm discouraged at how defensive he's getting. Now, maybe when he's on camera, he's better able to differentiate and to be more mature. So, I don't know.
Do you ever consider living with Ed again?
I will never live with him again until it's us picking a place together and deciding on it together.
Yeah. So I think what she's saying is, I don't want to be in a position where I'm living in his place and he feels like he has the right to kick me out. So until we find a place that we're both picking together equally and we're both moving in equally, I don't want to move into his place. I think that's a smart move for sure.
I will
Which
never
will have
move
two
back
separate
in.
bedrooms.
That's not love.
No,
Yeah, it's not love.
no.
That's weird to me.
Okay, so it could be weird to you, but it doesn't mean it's not love or invalid or something. It's certainly not the cultural norm. But I've treated couples that had wonderful relationships or typical normal relationships, and they didn't even live together. They were married and they both had different houses or both had different condos. It's different, but it's not invalid. There was a time when being gay or lesbian was very odd to people's culture. They would react this way. Oh, I don't agree with that. There's something wrong with that. It's just something you don't know. So how about you just recognize that? You don't know it. You haven't seen it. You don't want to do that. That's not how you would want to do things. It doesn't mean that it's pathological just because you have not heard of it before.
Like work on your relationship, that is kind of not make sense to me, but maybe it's working out for you, but it don't look like that.
It's just not fair to constantly push me away and pull me back in,
No,
because
that's
I am
not
on
fair.
my very, very last straw.
As you should
And
be.
so am I. So am I.
Okay, I tend to believe Liz in that way. It's hard to know what very, very, very last straw means. Maybe that means this is the next breakup is the final one, or there's 3 more breakups in her. I don't know. But, yeah, okay.
Why do you think that?
Because of the history of the fighting. She keeps coming back, and I don't even understand sometimes why she comes back after their big fights.
She gave me a 2-week ultimatum. Either you marry me in 2 weeks or a commitment,
No.
or I'm out. That's
I said
exactly what
either
you said.
you commit yourself
You marry
back
me within
into
2
it.
weeks or I'm
No.
out of here.
No.
That's exactly what you
No.
said.
All right, interesting. So who knows what really happened, but I will tell you from experience clinically that couples always under conflict that they're remembering, they're both recalling a previous conflict, they will always remember different stories. One person, and this is just classic, you said, I know it, and Ed just seems absolutely sure. You said you either marry me in 2 weeks or I'm gone. And Liz is like, no, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. I absolutely did not say that. Here's what I said. So could one or both of them be distorted about their memory or have even encoded the memory in a way that was different than what actually happened? Absolutely. Could they be recalling in a distorted way? Yeah. Could they be making something up? Yeah. I don't know. They seem pretty adamant about their position. Could Liz have said something like that in the throes of conflict, perhaps with some alcohol in the two of them? Yeah, I could see that. Do I think that Liz would, in a sober way, in a calm way, want to force him to marry her within 2 weeks or else? No, I don't think that. Could I imagine Liz saying something else that was similar to that? It's just like, either we've been fighting so much and, you keep, it's on and off, you break up with me, you get back to, I'm giving you 2 weeks. You either prove to me that this is forever and that you want to get married and I'm going to be looking for this and this and this, or we're done. Could she have said that? Yeah. Could he have interpreted that as some sort of weird ultimatum? But I will say it's notable that the friend, I don't know if I showed, but the friend came out, the former friend of Ed came out. And as soon as he came out, Ed starts laying into Liz. Before that, Ed was defending Liz. Friend comes out, all of a sudden, Ed's now attacking Liz. It's interesting, right? It's an interesting thing that I think is indicative of the way their life is off camera as well.
Liz,
When he wanted
I'm
to
gonna
make
be
it
truthful.
work again,
You're being truthful. I'm
I
gonna be
said, you're
truthful.
either all in trying to make this relationship work last
And you have
time
2
or I'm
weeks,
done.
bro. I'm gonna go be with the other guys. I'm putting
No,
myself
I
back on the
said
market.
either you're going
Liz,
to
I will
try
show
to
you
make
the
this work
text.
with me right now, or I'm going to go be
You
single.
threaten me. You're like, I'm gonna go.
Okay, so they're texting this, which I always just assume that they're having these conversations in person, but why would I assume that? There's a pretty good likelihood that a lot of these fights are happening over text, which I just have to say people don't do that. Do not have a complicated conversation such as this, particularly if it's conflictual, over text. Like, just because it's a normal way to communicate in a certain context does not mean it's an effective or advised method of communicating about things that are really hard to understand. I mean, the amount of misinterpretation, the amount of triggering, I mean, it's well understood as here. I mean, unless you just cover it with emojis trying to communicate how you're truly feeling. But even then, so yeah, just stop it. Don't do, I can't tell you how many times I'd have a client, they'd be telling me about a conflict and I'd be like, oh, you know, and there you go. Yeah, I can show you the text. I'm like, really? Text? No, you know, don't do that. That's now, I will say there are rare circumstances that I will actually recommend people communicate about sensitive things over text. For those rare couples, they're actually more able to be vulnerable and differentiated and fair and ethical over texting because they're less triggered or they have more time to think about what they're going to say. There are couples like that, but I don't think this couple, I wouldn't have thought that this couple would be one of those couples, and it sounds like they're not. So they are talking about a text fight that they had. Now, do I believe that she said something that could be interpreted the way that he's interpreting it? Yeah. But it is interesting that he's bringing it up now, like out of nowhere, as soon as the friend sits down. Yeah, if I were her, if I were Liz, I would be pretty frustrated with Ed and his friends that as soon as, because that was the frequent thing, right? Liz and Ed would be having a regular relationship. Ed would hang out with his friend or his mom or something or his daughter, and then Ed would actually get the friend to call Liz and break up with, you know, Ed would want to break up with her. And so Ed would convince the friend to break up with, you know, to break up for him, break up with Liz for him. Why is it so hard for me to say that out loud? And so, yeah, it's interesting that Ed has, because he comes across as someone who seems so firm in his understanding or his belief system, but why would I assume that? I mean, the way he exhibits himself on the show is that he's extremely susceptible to who's in the room, that he might not even know how he feels or who he is or whatever. I don't know. Or he feels like he needs to prove himself to his friend, or I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's talk about empowerment. When we feel empowered, we recognize our strengths. When we feel empowered and we experience adversity, we're more likely to see it as a welcome challenge rather than an overwhelming obstacle. And since we're social creatures, we often need help from others to feel empowered at times. We might need others to give us perspective. We might need others to recognize how we might be able to overcome the obstacle. And sometimes the people around us, they're really not that much help. I've been there before. When I went to therapy for the first time when I was 19 years old, it was primarily because none of my friends were very helpful in this area. Sometimes it's really great to talk with a therapist when you want to feel more empowered. Well, that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp is convenient and flexible and affordable. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
No, I said either you're going
Liz,
to try to make this work with me right now, or I'm going to go be
You
single.
threaten me. You're like, I'm going to go
and
sleep
date.
around. That's you.
Because you dumped me. I'm single. So either
Well, Liz, if that's what you want, don't threaten me.
Commit yourself.
Don't threaten me. Don't threaten me. Go live your single.
So, yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of conflict like this in my office. Pretty typical, nothing really alarming, very common. I would say most couples, when they're going through difficult times, will have conflict like this. On TV, it can look pretty, quote unquote, toxic. And maybe it is, but I don't think that this is unusual for the two of them anyway. And it's also not unusual for a mostly healthy relationship to have moments like this. So, I don't know what to say beyond that. But he's saying that she was threatening him, that she was saying, I'm going to sleep around. And he's framing it as her, trying to threaten him with that or something. And okay, could that have happened? It's hard to imagine Liz saying something like that. Could I imagine her saying something like that over text while they're in a high conflict and Ed is also being extremely unfair and unkind and hostile? Maybe. I could imagine more likely, though, is that she said something like that when they're fighting back and forth, and he says, because he does this, he'll say something like, so, now that we're broken up, you're probably just going to sleep around, aren't you? And she says, I don't know, maybe I will. I could imagine her saying something like that. And then he's like, oh, there she is. Like, she's threatening to sleep around, when it's like, well, we're broken up and you just asked me a question if I'm going to possibly date other people. And if you want to know the truth, yeah, I probably will. So I'm just answering who knows? Maybe I'm biased for Liz. There's a lot of possibilities here.
You're going to try to make this work with me right now, or I'm going to go be single. You want me? Commit yourself.
Don't threaten me. Don't threaten me. Go live your single life.
Yeah, don't threaten, but also take a beat and try to hear her. You're the one who attacked her to begin with, or brought up a sensitive topic, or you're, talking over her. She's trying to defend herself, but they're both basically talking over the other person. She is saying either commit to me or I'm out. And I've said this before, that with other couples and this couple, that one of the markers of a relationship that has crossed the Rubicon into a very unhealthy place is when you hear people using phrases like that or similar things like, who are we watching? Oh, with Michael and Angela, where Michael would be pleading with Angela, trying to level with her, trying to convince her to listen and talk about her accusations of him. And he was trying to reassure her. He was trying to talk with her and trying to accommodate and putting up with a lot of stuff, trying to, calm her down and really trying to do whatever he could while remaining honest to get her to listen. And none of those things worked. And so eventually he resorted to lying to her, saying that he had canceled his Instagram when he hadn't. And then it worked. And then he's like, oh, I guess that's what I have to do to get her to listen to me, is I have to lie to her or something. And that sets up a really, really destructive pattern, because if once you learn that, then you learn, oh, I always have to, I've had other couples similarly where in order for someone to be heard, they have to break up with someone. So they'll plead, they'll try to communicate, they'll share their feelings, they'll calmly try to walk them down a path of where they eventually will understand, and nothing works, and then eventually they decide to go, screw it, I'll break up with you. And then they learn, oh, now I'm finally being listened to. And it sets this pattern of like, okay, well, push comes to shove, I break up with them. And it's a regulatory mechanism within our relationship. Cheating on someone, threatening to cheat, threatening to leave. When we see these repetitive mechanisms in place in a relationship, I mean, you could argue that Angela is doing that as well, whether it's because of Angela's issues or because of the relationship. I mean, I would argue that's because of Angela's issues that she would repeatedly threaten to break up with Michael and yell at him. It's just an indication like that the relationship is at least halfway off the rails, even though to them they might be like, well, if it works, it works. It's like, well, at what cost, right? So I think that's what's happening, is that Liz is exhibiting something that she's learned over time that is the only thing that works with Ed to get him to listen, which is to threaten to leave him. She's never left him. He's always the one that's left her. I think both of them do that to each other, where they both give this message of like, you better watch it or I'm going to break up with you. And, there's a rationality to that, right? That it's like, look, this either works or I'm out because I'm kind of at my last thread here. Sure. But in the midst of conflict, it's not the best time to bring that up. If you really want to break up with someone, go ahead and do it. But don't use it as some sort of tactic to get someone to listen to you. Just say, I really wish you would just listen to me for a second, or I really wish that you would stop talking over me, or I really wish that we could kind of go back. You can say those kinds of things, or what you're saying hurts me right now, or I'm getting, my feelings are hurt because it kind of feels like you don't really care about the relationship. I don't know if that's true. Use those kind of phrases because that's going to get to the heart of the matter and gives the other person an opportunity to rise to the occasion. But to just say, you either do this or I'm out is, and so he's like, you're threatening me. Now, from his side, he could say, okay, Liz, when you say that, it hurts my feelings because it sounds like a threat, which doesn't make me feel very secure in our relationship. Is that how you mean it? There's a lot of different ways. Either one of them could be more healthy in this conversation.
Going
Liz,
to
I will
try
show
to
you
make
the
this
text.
work with me right now, or I'm gonna go be
You threaten
single.
me. Like,
You
don't
want
threaten
me? Commit yourself.
Don't threaten me. Don't
Have you
threaten
not-
me. Go live your single life. You've never been single, Liz, and the whole idea of me wanting you to live on your own.
You've never been in a relationship,
Liz,
and the whole idea
right.
of you wanting a
But I
relationship
wanted
and
you-
then not
There's
wanting
the
a
mismatch.
relationship.
There's the mismatch.
Yeah. Ugh. I don't know if we've ever seen the two of them just sort of equally yammering at each other in this way. Usually it's Ed kind of flaring up and her defending herself, but this kind of bickering. So yeah, if you have trouble differentiating from this, if you're a friend or a mom or a daughter, it would be really hard to deal with this, So if you have a friend like this, practice your differentiation. If you have a client like this, practice your differentiation of just like, it's their problem, it's not mine. I care, but it's their problem, it's not mine. Their problem, not mine. In fact, for yourself, your tendency towards undifferentiation might be to such an extent that while just watching a TV show about people you don't even know, you might feel that triggering happening and that involvement. Now, of course, if you have trauma around this, you want treatment for that trauma. You don't want to experiment with that kind of exposure. But short of that, you can watch, because this is something that I actually walk my trainees through, is I will have them watch a clip or something of a movie or a TV show, and they have to be aware of their reactivity, because it's natural to have some, if not a lot, and then to practice differentiation, because if you're a therapist, you can't be effective. It's really hard to be effective if you get fused with individuals and their conflicts. So as you're hearing this, it's like, it's not my problem, it's their problem. I might have opinions and I have thoughts and I have ideas and I might be upset with someone, but I'm not personally threatened by this. It's not my issue. The more fused you are, the more undifferentiated you are, because you were raised this way, the more likelihood of fusion happens and it becomes your issue. You start to feel the fear and the threat and the pain upon watching this. And of course, if you're a friend, you're more likely to be invited in, triangulated in, and fused with. But if you're going to protect yourself, and also if you're going to be an effective friend or family member, differentiation is the key. You have to remain because the more involved you get, the more you get wrapped up in the tension and the anxiety, and the less you lose sight, the more you lose sight of your goals and yourself, and you just become part of the toxicity.
But Liz, you've never been alone.
For sure.
You've always been with a
Definitely
guy.
a mismatch.
You've always been in toxic, sick relationships.
That's the awful thing.
Yeah, that is an awful thing to say. Thanks, Kim. But okay, Ed, so what's the theme here? Are you including yourself in there? What's your point? But also, what's your point? What do you... So I think this is his way. I think he thinks this is his way of winning the argument by saying that she's toxic and that she has a problem and he's the healthy one, so all of their problems are her fault. That's what he will do. And he comes up with a lot of weird angles to try to make that point. So I think this is just another example of that.
To say.
It's the truth. Is it the truth?
But do you take any accountability for the
It has to be accountability
you
on
cause
both
her?
ends. See, we're always pointing the finger, but there's three pointing right back at you.
Exactly.
A lot of times we don't look at ourselves internally.
We don't look at
We got to look at
ourselves.
ourselves. And
It's just, I don't know about Bilal, but it's interesting that he would be the one to say this, that we often look at other people, we often point the finger, but we don't look at ourselves. I mean, we've certainly never seen on this show him at least taking responsibility for what we're seeing on the show. Maybe he is behind the scenes. It's hard to imagine. So it's just interesting that he would be the person to say this. All right, well, that is it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.